As each year comes to a close, something that I like to do is to spend time in reflection, celebrating the victories and learning lessons from the previous year, as well as looking ahead to the next, planning, dreaming, and setting goals. Of course, this is something that I like to do across the board, but one area that I find particularly helpful to spend some time doing this in is my finances, specifically looking at my spending habits. I like to look at any areas where I might be wasting money or just spaces in my home where I'm accumulating excess. I've been buying more than I need. Then depending on what I've identified, I'll set no-buy goals for myself in those areas. This is something that I like to challenge myself to do every year, and I find that it's a great way to save money as well as avoid accumulating excess. So I've gone ahead and created my no-buy list for 2025. I want to share it with you. So here are 10 things that I won't be buying in 2025. Be sure to stick around to the end too, when I'll be sharing my no-buy list from last year. I want to give you the inside scoop on how I did with last year's goals. There were some successes, some failures, but now let's get right into this list. The first thing that I will not be buying in 2025 is fun drinks. Okay, I know that sounds a bit confusing, so let me explain. This past year, without really consciously realizing that I was even doing it, I began just constantly keeping our fridge stocked with lots of sparkling water, some sodas. I began getting a kombucha pretty much anytime I was out grocery shopping. Things that I used to consider a treat, I just started buying on a continual basis. And got to the point where we were spending a good bit of money each month on them. And if that's where you choose to spend your money, that's perfectly fine. I don't have any problem with fun drinks, and I think that they can be a nice treat, but that's the thing, is I want to bring them back to their rightful place this coming year as being a treat, not just something that I buy habitually. So in 2025, I don't want to buy myself a drink every time I go out. I don't want to keep our fridge stocked with sodas and seltzers. Instead, I want to reserve those items for special occasions, for when we're hosting. The real goal here is saving money, cutting out excess from our budget. I think we were spending over $50 a month on this last year, so it's gotta stop. And something else that I want to refrain from buying in the upcoming year is books. I love reading, but something that I've realized about myself is I definitely go through phases of reading more books or less, and lately I just haven't found myself picking up a book as often. Now, that's something that I'd love to change, and I do find that I tend to read more in the winter, so hopefully we can work on that. But something that I've discovered is, even though I haven't been reading as much this past year, my book list, the amount of books that I own, has still increased. So this coming year, I really want to make it a goal to read through the entirety of my to-read list before getting any new books. But then even at that point, I would love to not purchase any new books and instead seek out cheap or free options to acquire new books to read. So I would love to leverage my local library where I can rent books for free, borrowing or trading books with friends. And then also too, I think thrifting books can be a great way of giving books new life, and it's also a bit more of a cost-effective way of doing that. So those are kind of the three options that I would love to pursue, only after though I've finished that current to-read list. Then moving on, I'd also love to refrain from buying new home decor. There are a couple things going through my mind with this one. First, I feel like I have a good amount of home decor and I don't really need more. Then also, just in terms of my personal taste and what I like, I really tend to gravitate towards more unique decor, things with character, and antiquing, thrifting. Those are great places to find things like that. And so this year, something that I'd love to do is to avoid buying any new decor and instead to look secondhand first, whether that's on Facebook Marketplace, thrifting, or even checking out our Buy Nothing group. But then on top of that, because I feel like I'm at a really good place with the amount of decor that I have, I'd also really like to institute a one in, one out policy for my home decor. So if I buy something new, I want to at the same time declutter something. That way I'm not accumulating excess home decor, and instead I'm kind of able to keep the status quo with what I have. I think that will give me the freedom to, if I find something really cool and unique secondhand, I can still get it, but it's going to make it so that I'm not just accumulating more than I need. Okay, but then this is a big one for me, and that's tea. Anyone who knows me personally knows just how much I love a good tea. Especially during the winter months, I tend to have several cups of tea a day. So we drink a lot of it around here, which is great. I'm not trying to stop drinking tea or anything, but even with as much as we do drink, I've accumulated even more, whether that's through buying tea or being given it. I think if I were to guess, I probably have somewhere between 20 and 30 flavors of tea right now. The problem that I've noticed is I'm not waiting until I run out of tea to restock, and instead I just kind of continually have been ordering more. So having realized that, here's what I want to do. My goal is to, before I buy any more tea, I want to fully use up what I already have. I want to get that stash to 0, and then going forward too, I think that while I do love having a variety of teas on hand, I feel like I have too many right now. So I would also love to just reduce the number of teas that I carry in my tea cabinet going forward. I think 10-ish flavors is a really good amount that I can stock going forward that will allow me some variety, because I do love trying different flavors while also just kind of keeping my tea collection in check. And I already know that this is going to be a hard one, but something else that I'd love to not buy in 2025 is new kids' clothing. Kids are in their clothing for such a short amount of time that there really just isn't much of a point in buying most things new for them. Especially with like dressier outfits, they're only going to wear them once or maybe a handful of times. And so this year, not buying new baby clothing is really a goal that I want to set for myself, which I think just makes sense from a practical perspective, but I already know it's going to be hard because baby clothes are so cute. But just cost per wear, I feel like rarely is it worth it. So that's a goal that I'm setting for myself. Now, the one exception that I am going to make to this is I'm okay with buying a handful of basics new. What I found is in shopping secondhand, a lot of the basics, your basic onesies, pants, some of those do tend to be a lot more stained, stretched out. It's obvious the baby's got a lot of wear from those items, and so it's harder to find those in good condition secondhand. So I'm okay with buying a handful of those new. For the most part, I really want to focus on buying secondhand wherever possible. We'll save buying new as a last resort. And something else on my no-buy list for the year is hosting supplies. We love to host, whether that's having friends over for dinner, hosting get-togethers or parties. And so over the years, we've acquired a number of different, whether it's serving platters, bowls, utensils. Most of those things get used fairly frequently, which is great. That's what you want to have. But recently, I've realized we're at a good place, we have what we need, and we don't really need more. And so in the upcoming year, I really want to focus on loving and using what we have without getting anything new. I think sometimes it can be a really healthy thing to realize when you have enough of something, and that's where I'm at with hosting supplies. Now let's talk candles. I've been given a number of candles this past year and have purchased a couple as well, but something that I'm finding is, like with my books, where I'm adding more to my collection than I'm able to read, is I've been acquiring more candles than I'm getting through. So this year, I really want to focus on truly enjoying my candles, not just looking at them, but burning them and using them up. My goal is to use up all of my candles before buying any more. I have a handful of candles scattered around the house right now, as well as maybe 4 or 5 in back stock. So my goal is to get my candle count to 0 before buying any new ones. Then one goal that I want to bring back from last year is I don't want to buy any new plants. I actually reduced my plant collection a lot last year, so this was a big win for me, but it's something that I'm feeling like I might want to do again. Oliver is already rolling. He's going to be crawling and walking anytime now, so having a ton of plants in my home in this season of life just isn't super realistic. Plus also a lot of my taking care of and nurturing things time is spoken for these days. So even if I could technically just keep a new plant out of reach of Oliver, I don't want to spend a ton of my time or money on something that I know I'm just not going to be able to take as good care of as I'd like to. Now, if I'm just going to neglect a plant, I feel like it would be better off in someone else's home. And so that's true of new plants for me in 2025. I feel like just bringing new plants into my life doesn't make sense. But then also too, I think it might be time to further pare down my plant collection. There are a few that I hope to never get rid of that I truly do love and will, baby proof. We'll make sure that they're out of reach of Oliver. But I really feel like I'm in a season of wanting to whittle down my plant collection to keep only the ones that I truly love, that are worth the time and energy for me, and to pass the rest on to good homes. Then a quick clothing one. This year, I'd love to avoid buying any clothing that's super structured or that isn't versatile. And talking about seasons of life, I'm a big believer that your wardrobe should be reflective of who you are right now, this version of you, not someone that you were years ago. I think I'm finally admitting to myself that these days my wardrobe needs are just a bit different. I'm still breastfeeding, I have a baby, we hope to have at least one more child in the future. There are all these factors that I need to consider now that I just didn't before. And so in the upcoming year, I really want to commit to not buying things that I'm just not going to get wear from because they aren't practical. So as I've been thinking through this one, I've realized there are really a couple of boxes that I want any clothing item that I'm looking at buying to check. I want it to be breastfeeding friendly, that's a must. I'd love it to be able to grow with me through at least part, if not the entirety of future pregnancies, which I know that one's going to be a bit harder, but it's a factor I'd like to consider. And for sure, it needs to be comfortable and something that I can move around in without having to think about. So those are the factors that I want to consider on top of course, all of the normal things like, do I like it? Does it fit? All of that. But I'm really hoping that by filtering any purchase that I'm looking at making through those factors, it's really going to help me to curate a wardrobe that's practical for the season of life that I'm in. All right, then the final thing that I will not be buying in 2025 is takeout. Prior to this past year, we were never really a big takeout family. We pretty much always either cooked homemade meals or ate out on dates or with friends. But that really changed significantly earlier this year when Oliver came into the picture. Shortly after Oliver was born, we got into the habit of ordering takeout a handful of times a week, which was fine for a season. We had a newborn baby. Making homemade meals just wasn't atop my priority list at the time. And the problem was, once we exited the newborn phase, that habit continued and we were still ordering takeout several times a week. In the past few months, I realized just how much it was adding up. I did the math and I think we were spending on average 30 to 50% more on each meal when we were getting takeout, not to mention the fact that takeout itself just isn't the healthiest. You don't know what's going into the majority of the food that you're eating. And so in 2025, I really want to quit takeout so that we can save money and also support our health. Of course, saying this, I really want to be cognizant of the fact that one of the reasons we defaulted to takeout so often this past year is the fact that takeout is easy, it's low effort, and when you have a baby, sometimes life just gets away from you a bit. And so what I want to do to support this goal, to make it a reality, is to, at the same time as having the goal, I want to make sure that we're stocking our fridge, our freezer with easy meals that only take 10 to 15 minutes to put together. That way I have options that are easy, they're low effort for those days when life just gets away from you a bit. I think that's really important with some of these. It's really important not just to have a goal, you need to have a plan for how are you going to actually make it happen. So that's the list of everything that I won't be buying in 2025. I think some of them will be easier, some more challenging, but I'm really excited about all of the ones that I've selected for this year. But before we wrap up, I do also want to take a quick look at last year, see how we did. So as a quick reminder, the 10 things in 2024 that I said that I did not want to buy were junk food and novelty items, maternity clothing, cleaning supplies, board games, impulse purchases, glassware, camera gear, plants, additional subscription services, and bedding and towels. And looking at this list, I really have to say, I think we did a great job. Like, this honestly may have been our best year yet. That said, there was one notable category that I do really feel like I could have done better in, and that was impulse purchases. Let's chat about it. I said that I wanted to be more intentional with my purchases and then also to really have a plan for the things that I was buying. In some areas of my life, I definitely saw improvement with this, but I think especially when it came to buying things for the baby, I kind of struggled. As a first-time parent, I feel like I was very much navigating an unknown, and I think in some ways kind of overcompensated. I feel like especially when I was buying things before Oliver came, I kind of defaulted to the mentality of, oh, we may need this, instead of, oh, we actually need this. You can kind of see some of the results of that in my things you don't need for a newborn video. There were a lot of items that we just didn't end up using. Now that said, I feel like in the past few months, I've really learned my lesson, I've come a long way, and now I'll only buy something for Oliver when he's ready for it, when I know I need it. So we're getting there, but this is for sure something that I'd like to continue to work on moving forward. But apart from that one, really I'd say pretty much the rest of these were all wins, but want to highlight highlight a couple of them in particular. I think maternity clothing is probably the one that I'm the most proud of. Last year, I said that I wanted to borrow, rent, or thrift as much maternity clothing as possible, that I didn't want to spend a ton of money on things that I was only going to wear a couple of times, and I feel like I really succeeded in this. During all 9 months of pregnancy, I only bought 2 maternity-specific items. I bought 1 pair of leggings, 1 pair of bike shorts, both of which I wore on repeat throughout my entire pregnancy. They're still in great condition too, so I hope to be able to wear them for future pregnancies as well. They're items that I only bought 2 after I'd exhausted all of my other options, but for literally everything else that I wore during my pregnancy, I either borrowed, thrifted, or rented everything, and it really worked. I didn't feel like I was lacking at all, and it's something that I hope to repeat in the future. Then another big win was subscription services. I said that I didn't want to add to our subscription services at all, and I'm happy to report that not only did we not acquire any new subscription services, but we actually canceled a number as well. Specifically with our streaming services, for the past few years, we'd subscribed to a handful of different services and would really only use one at a time, and so last year, we just decided to cancel all the services that we weren't currently using and instead to develop a rotation for our streaming services. So now we're only subscribed to one at a time. We have our show on there that we watch, and then when we feel like we've exhausted all the shows we're wanting to watch on a given platform, we'll just switch to a new streaming service. It's been a really easy, just effortless way to save money. Now, we aren't paying for services that we aren't using. So lowering our subscription total has felt great, but then just a couple final categories that I want to shout out. We don't need to go into depth on them, but with board games, glassware, camera gear, bedding, and towels, with each of these categories, not only did I not buy a single new item for them in 2024, but also I was actually able to reduce the number of things that I had in most of these categories over the course of the year, thus reducing clutter in our home. So some more great wins there. So overall, just really happy with how 2024 went. Like I was saying, I really do think that this was my best year yet, which is so exciting, and also just makes me so look forward to 2025 as well. Can build off of some of those wins. But now I'd really love to hear from you. Is there anything that you committed to not buying in 2024? How did that go? Or is there anything that in 2025 you want to say, okay, I'm not going to buy these things? Be sure to let me know how that went, what those things are in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, to cheer you on. But that is everything I've got for you today. So until next time, friends, don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye, friends.